Hey everyone, I'm Adam Dede and welcome to a Neurojournal Club. In the last few videos we've been talking about how information accesses consciousness, but today we're going to ask a different question. How do subliminal stimuli influence our mood, influence our decision making? So this is kind of looking at it from the other side. We showed in some of the last couple videos that a lot of the information that hits the eyes and hits our senses does not make it all the way into consciousness. Does that information still have an impact on the way that we feel and what we do? So let's take a look. So from where do our feelings spring? Is it something I feel happy because I got a raise or this good thing happened in my life? I'm sad because I didn't get that promotion, or I didn't manage to hit my fitness goal, or whatever it may be? Or are our emotions things that come from non-conscious sources too? Are there things that we aren't even aware that we're processing that have an impact on us? And I'm going to argue that there is. Just merely being exposed to something has an effect. And this is called the mere exposure effect. Very creative naming. So does simply seeing an object make us like it more? That's the big question with the mere exposure effect. And the answer is yes. So this guy, Bob Zients, is really the main person who's done a lot of this research on mere exposure effect. And today we're going to talk about 3 of his studies. So this first one is from Zients and Radecki, 1969. And the basic study is fairly simple. So Turkish words are printed in the university newspaper. They're printed totally unadorned, just kind of a little box randomly somewhere on the front page, has a couple of Turkish words in it, and that's it. They're printed between 1 and 25 times over the course of a 25-day period. So some words are being printed every single day, and some words are just printed one time. Zients and Radecki sent out a survey in the mail asking people to respond as a way to collect some data. And this is the main piece of instruction that they gave them. They said, this questionnaire is part of a larger body of research on linguistics and communication. Listed below are 12 words with which you are not likely to be familiar. We would like you to give us your impression of each of the words. Of course, we realize that you could not reasonably guess exact meanings. It will be sufficient for our purposes, however, if you simply estimate whether a particular word means something good or something bad. So they're just trying to get people's general impression of these words. They're not asking, did you see these words before? And they're not asking for any specific meaning. So what did they find? So they found that the more repetitions that a word had in the school paper, the more people liked it. And these ratings were taken on a 1 to 5 scale. So you can see that by the time a word's been repeated 25 times, you're getting pretty up there, about 4.1, 4.2 on that 5-point scale. People are really into these Turkish words if they see them a bunch of times. And that seems to be all it takes for people to like these words. So some interim conclusions here. So more exposure improves effective ratings. And this is true even when there's no goal associated with processing those stimuli. People didn't know that they were going to be presented with these Turkish words again. They just saw them in the paper and they read them or didn't read them, thought about them, didn't think about them. No particular reason for it. But is it just memory? Is this a situation where if you remember something, if you have familiarity for it, there's a positive association with familiarity? Maybe we just kind of generally like stuff that is familiar to us. There's no work of learning. There's no fear of novelty. It's just nice to have things that are familiar. So is it just memory? Did they remember which Turkish words they had seen in the paper before and just kind of like them merely because they remembered them? So in the next study we'll take a look at, Kunst-Wilson and Zients in 1980, they looked at subliminal mere exposure. So what happens when the stimuli being used for the mere exposure effect are presented so fast that people can't even see them? So they did this in a lab experiment rather than the real world. 1 millisecond presentation of shapes, so these were kind of random polygons that they used, and they were presented just crazy fast. 1 millisecond, 1/1000th of a second. So They showed shapes 5 times each for half of the shapes, so this is the repeated condition, shapes that were shown 5 times each, and then 0 times each for the other half. So some of these shapes have been presented 5 times each, and some of them are totally novel. And then what they're going to do is give people 2 alternative forced choice. So they'll present 2 shapes on the screen at a time, and they're going to ask people for memory response. So here are 2 shapes. One of them you may not have been able to properly see it because it was presented so fast, but one of them we did present to you earlier. Which one is it? And then they're also going to ask people for affective ratings, just like they did in the previous study. They're going to put these 2 stimuli up, and they're going to just say, hey, which one of these 2 shapes do you like more? Doesn't matter why, just which one do you like more? And they found something really pretty cool. Again, more exposure equals more better. We can see here that in the case of recognition, so that's when people were being asked to use memory to judge which of the 2 shapes they had seen before, whether people were guessing, indicating they were half sure or completely sure, their percent correct was pretty much a chance. So 0.5, if you've got 2 alternative forced choice, then your probability of just guessing correct is 0.5, 50%, and you can see that for these recognition judgments, they're right at chance. But then when they're using the affective judgment, so they're just asked which one do you like more, it doesn't matter if you've seen it before, we can see that participants get pretty accurate. When they're half sure or very sure, all of a sudden they're choosing the item that has been shown to them before with a way above chance rate, up here at almost 70%. So something's going on where they have this liking, this just affective draw to things that they've seen before, but they can't remember having seen the information before. The information's presented so fast that they didn't even see it, really. But they did, because they like it. It's just weird. What's going on? So mirror exposure does not require conscious memory. This is a fully non-conscious process. Doesn't require any conscious perception at all, either at the time of test or at the time of initial perception. The effect is implicit. Seems pretty narrow though. Like, does this really have an ability to affect our day-to-day lives, considering that it's just, yeah, you see this particular stimulus a bunch of times, and so you like that particular stimulus. But how much does that really matter in terms of your overall mood or your overall decision-making, your overall biases? So in this experiment, Monahan, Murphy, and Zients, 2000, they were trying to look at whether or not the mirror exposure effect is really limited to the stimuli being presented, or if it can spread to other stimuli. So again, they're going to use super fast presentation, so fast as to be subliminal. They're going to ask a new question though. Does this effect spread? And to do this in their first experiment, they're going to look at the effect on general mood. So just, do people get generally happier or generally sadder when they're presented with stimuli multiple times versus a bunch of individual stimuli 1 time each? And specifically, they're going to have some participants are going to experience 5 presentations of 5 different stimuli, so 5 by 5. The same 5 stimuli are going to get repeated 5 times for a total of 25 presentations. And the other half of the participants are going to see 25 different stimuli 1 time each. So this is just 1 presentation each, no repetitions. So they've got their repetition condition and their 1 time each condition. And they're going to do this with Chinese symbols. And again, keep in mind, participants won't know if they're in the repeated condition or the 1 each condition because the stimuli are presented so fast as to be subliminal. So what did they find? So they find that repetitive stimulation makes for happiness. So when people were asked what is their current mood on a 1 to 5 scale of faces that ranged from being neutral up to super happy, people chose a more happy face to represent their current mood if they'd been looking at repeated Chinese characters versus singular Chinese characters. And the same thing was true when they were asked in a different way, how happy versus sad are you? They rated themselves as more happy, higher end of the scale, than the people who had seen 25 individual Chinese characters. And then the same thing was true when they were asked how upbeat versus depressed they felt. Again, people who had looked at the repeated Chinese characters were a little bit more upbeat than the people who had looked at the single Chinese characters. So this is a little bit crazy if you think about it. Just the fact that they're seeing the same thing repetitively makes them just overall happier about their lives. This is a super broad effect now. Where before we were talking about just, oh, you see this Turkish word, you like this Turkish word. Now it's you see this Chinese character multiple times and suddenly your whole life is better. So that's pretty crazy. So what about novel stimuli? What about something a little bit more concrete than just like, oh, what's your overall mood? That's pretty vague. So in experiment 2, half the participants have subliminal repetition of Chinese symbols, and the other half see unique symbols. So exactly the same as before. Half of them are having that 5x5, half of them are doing the 25x1. And then they test liking ratings for similar symbols, so Chinese symbols that the participants had not seen, so novel Chinese symbols, but similar. And then for dissimilar polygons. So these are just totally different from Chinese symbols, just some other random stimulus, And here now what we see is that, not surprisingly, the repeated old stimuli are more positively rated than the single old stimuli. So that's really a repetition of exactly what we've seen in Zience's former studies. And then it seems to spread to the similar stimuli. So these are those other Chinese characters that the participants had not seen. And that kind of makes sense too. If you have this gaining of familiarity with Chinese characters by seeing the same ones over and over again, maybe that makes you generally like Chinese characters a little bit more. But then the really surprising thing is this different category. So these are those polygons. And what we can see here is that if you've seen repetitive presentation of Chinese characters, all of a sudden you like polygons more. So again, as we saw with the overall mood ratings, mere exposure is a leaky phenomenon. It seems to really affect a broad range of mood-related indices. And that's kind of crazy. Like just seeing something familiar, having something presented to you multiple times, even with no conscious awareness, is going to lead you to have a generally upbeat mood, to generally like the stimuli that you encounter, even if they're totally different from the repeated stimulus. They're going to make you generally like stimuli that you encounter more than you would have otherwise. So let's think about some conclusions here. So the more you see something, the more you like it. Doesn't matter what it is. The more you see familiar things, the happier you are. And this is not conscious. So people are able to make these effective ratings where they like a stimulus more than some other stimulus, and that can faithfully represent which stimuli they've seen before, but yet they cannot make an explicit memory judgment. They don't realize that the affective judgment, the liking, is coming from any kind of memory. They have just no awareness. This is just automatic. Just to emphasize on that non-consciousness, just people don't know. It's just automatically going on all the time. Imagine how many stimuli in your life are stimuli that you see on a regular basis. Your friends, your family, your computer, your phone. Maybe there's a water bottle that you carry with you all the time. There's so many stimuli, your car, different things that we see all the time, and we automatically become attached to these things as seeing the same stimulus over and over again is going to make you happy, and you're going to tend to like that stimulus more and more. What does this mean then if we think about the societal implications? They're kind of major. If you grow up in an environment where you tend to see people of the same racial background as you, you're going to end up being happier seeing people of the same racial background as you, and you're going to be made comfortable seeing those people of the same racial background, and that effect will go away if you see people from a different racial background. So this is going to have major societal implications that we're entirely not aware of. We don't realize that our overall mood can be so drastically altered just by being merely exposed to a stimulus over and over again. And I think if you start to think about this for a minute, you're going to realize that there's just wide-sweeping things that this can cause in our society. So anyway, if you may have noticed, sadly when you're making a video, I can only go as fast as 1/60th of a second, one frame. So these may not have been totally subliminal, but now one of these stimuli has been presented to you several times throughout the course of this video, and one has only been presented once. Now I want you to think, just which one do you like better? Regardless of whether or not you can remember or notice which one was shown to you. Which one do you like better? I'll tell you in the description down below which one was the one that was shown during the video. And now I'll just leave you with a quote from Aristotle. "Things do not seem the same to those who love and those who hate, nor to those who are angry and those who are calm. For to the friend, the man about whom he is giving judgment seems either to have committed no offense or a minor one, while for the enemy it is the opposite. And to the man who is enthusiastic and optimistic, if what is to come should be pleasant, it seems to be both likely to come about and likely to be good, while to the indifferent or depressed man it seems the opposite." So it seems like he understood the mirror exposure effect and the idea that our mood can dramatically alter the way in which we perceive stimuli, and the way that we perceive those stimuli can dramatically alter our mood. Anyway, that's the video for today. Hope you liked it. Please click the thumbs up. It really helps in the algorithms. Go ahead and subscribe if you'd like to see more of these videos, and you can support me down on Patreon. Cool. Thanks. I'll see you next time.